Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're doing good. This is third video of our series on Ansible for absolute beginner. I apologize for delays in these videos. In this video, we are going to look into Ansible Playbooks. In the first video, if you remember in this series, we talked about what Ansible is, where does it stands in terms of DevOps ecosystem. And we also learned about a little bit about how to set up our local Windows machine with WSL to run Ansible. And in the second video, we learned about Ansible inventories and YAML language because Ansible playbooks are written in YAML and we need to have little understanding of how YAML works before we start writing Ansible playbooks. Now in third video, we are going to look into Ansible playbooks itself. One more thing is that the first two videos were a little bit longer. So what I've decided is that we'll make these videos a little shorter. We'll be covering one or two concepts in a single video, and hopefully that will make sure that the videos don't get a lot longer. So today we will be talking about what Ansible playbooks are, and then how to verify or check and lint the Ansible playbooks, and then we'll see how we can run them. So when we talk about Ansible playbooks, in a nutshell, you can think of Ansible playbook as the YAML file where we define what we want Ansible to do. So whatever we want Ansible to do, we'll define that in the playbooks. That's one thing. For example, Ansible playbook can be a set of commands that you want to run on a remote server. So for example, here you see Ansible playbook can be, let's say you want to run one command on server 1, run command on server 2, server 3, and then restart server 1, server 2, server 3. So this can be an Ansible playbook for you. Although the syntax is not same, I just want to make it clear to you what Ansible playbook contains. On the other hand, Ansible playbook can contain little complex tasks also. For example, install certain version of OpenJDK on, let's say, 40 production servers, then install OpenLiberty application server on 30 of them, maybe install MySQL database on 10 production servers, and configure Liberty server on 30 production servers. So essentially, Ansible playbook is where you define what you want Ansible to do. This is your main entry point to Ansible, where your set of instructions would be. Now let's take a closer look at how Ansible playbooks are written. So Ansible playbook is a single YAML file that contains a set of plays. So playbook contains one or more plays. Plays, on the other hand, defines a set of activities which are called tasks to be run on a host. And then the task is an action that needs to be performed on the host. So a task can be, for example, executing a command or running a script or installing a package. So essentially, playbook can have one or more plays. Plays can have one or more tasks, and task is your action that you want to perform on the remote host. That's your playbook. That's how the playbooks are written. So if we go back to the example, this is our Ansible playbook to get date, time zone from a Linux server. So now if you see here, if I minimize this, so this whole file, Ansible playbook -2.yml, is a single file which is your playbook. So in this playbook, we only have single play, which is to get date, time zone from a Linux server. If I now expand this single play has few tasks, right? So like I mentioned earlier, tasks are the action that you want to perform on a host, and the host is defined at the play level. So for the example, in this case, the play is to get date, time zone from a Linux server, which would be executed on a local host. So let's just remove it for now so that we don't get confused. So we have the name of the play where we want to run this play, and then we have set of tasks. So now task is your action that you want to perform on the host. So for example, task can have a name, and this thing is called module. And register we will talk probably in next video when we talk about variables and how to say variable. But just for now, you can think of a task like these actions that we want to perform on the remote host. So in this playbook, we have a single play and which has 4 tasks: get date, get time zone, print date, and print time zone. So a task is an action that we want to perform on the remote host. So in this case, we are getting the date from the remote host, getting the time zone, printing the date, and printing the time zone. So that's essentially how a structure of a playbook would look like. Then you can have a multiple play. So you can have a second play here. So we have first play, like for example, get the date time zone from a Linux server, and the second play could be from Wintel servers, because Wintel might have a different commands that we need to run to get the time. Although for your information, date and time zone, these kind of things, we don't need to run separate modules from Ansible, because if you remember, I removed one value from here, which was gather facts, and I made it false. But Ansible do have a inbuilt mechanism where it can gather the facts about the remote host where it is performing the action, and it can give you certain attributes by default if you want to get it, like date, time zone, IP address, etc. We'll probably talk about that later on when we talk about modules in a separate video. But for now, I hope you understand the concept of a single play, and a playbook is basically a set of multiple plays which can run tasks. Now, similar to that, I also have another playbook for you where we have basically segregated the single play into multiple plays. So we have a single play to just get the, for example, in this case, date from the Linux server, and the second play is to just get the time zone from Linux server. So basically, this is also your playbook example, which has multiple plays which are going to run certain tasks on the remote host. The second thing I want to mention is that these playbooks are your ordered list. So they will be executed in the order that they are written. So for example, you have first play here, second play here. So you would have this first play would get executed first, and then the second play will get executed. Similarly, in the case of tasks also, you'll have the first task executed first, followed by the second task. So it's not like unordered list. It's a ordered list that we talked about in YAML. Although, on the other hand, when we define the play, it's just a dictionary. So we talked about that in our previous lecture or video, where we talked about the fact that in dictionary, the order doesn't matter. So if you would notice here, in my first playbook, I have the name first, which is the name of the play, and then the host where I want to run the play. On the other hand, in the second play, we have the host first, followed by the name of the play. In both cases, it really doesn't matter because this is a dictionary, so it will be considered the same. Whereas the task itself is not a dictionary, it's list, which is ordered list. So that's why the order would matter. Similarly, in case of plays also, order matters. So you have to be careful in terms of the structure you would be writing your playbook in, because that would decide what would be executed first, followed by the second thing. So that's about the ordered list, which is tasks, versus the play metadata, which is a dictionary. So I hope now you have got a little idea about playbook, plays, and task in Ansible. The next step is how do we run the Ansible playbook. So it's very straightforward. If you are using the CLI, that is command line interface, you would have to use Ansible Playbook command to run your playbook. On the other hand, if you are using Ansible UI, for example, Ansible Tower, or these days there is Ansible Controller because they are moving to AAP, which is Ansible Automation Platform. We will probably be talking about that in advanced series on Ansible, but this one is for absolute beginners, so don't worry about it. There are various ways we can run Ansible playbooks. For this video's purpose, we will be running it as through CLI. So it's straightforward. It's similar to Ansible ad hoc commands that you used to run. So we will type Ansible playbook, and so let me list the playbook. So for example, let's say we want to run this playbook, which was to get the date and time zone from a Linux server. So the playbook name is ansible-playbook2.yaml. So in this case, what we will do is we'll run Ansible playbook space playbook name ansible-playbook2.yaml. If we want to specify the inventory, we would have to do that. If we want to specify the user, we would have to do that. If we want to specify the vault, we can also do that. So don't worry about that. The easiest and simplest way is just run Ansible Playbook and your playbook name. Now if I type enter, you can say that since I didn't provide the inventory information, that's fine because we are running it on localhost. You can see here the play started here. The play name was get date time zone from Linux server, and then the tasks were started. First was to get the date, second was to get the time zone, then print the date, print the time zone, and that's the play recap. So we just ran it on a single host, and now we can see the date and time for our localhost machine because that's what we wanted through this playbook. So that's running a single playbook which has single play. Let's run a playbook where we divided the tasks into 2 plays. If you remember, we had created another play book where we said, okay, let's just get the date first in a single play, and the second play was to get the time zone. And we've also wanted to test what if we change the order, because since these key value pairs are part of dictionary, the theory says it should not matter. Let's test it. So Ansible Playbook name. In this case, you would notice the difference. So if you see here, play started, get the date from Linux server. We got the date, we printed the date. So that's your first task that got executed. Then your second play started here. So that's your first play that got executed. And then the second play started here, which was to get the time zone. We got the time zone and then printed the time zone. So in this case, you had 2 plays running one after another. Whereas if in the previous playbook, there was single play and which was running 4 tasks. But in the second play, we had 2 plays running 2 tasks each, essentially doing the same thing. And in the summary, in both cases is the same because the summary is for the whole playbook, not for the individual play. So that's how we can run the Ansible playbook. When we go a little ahead, when we will look into Ansible vaults or extra variables, we will expand this command. But for now, you just run it like this, Ansible playbook and your playbook name. You can remember it like that. Okay, in this video, we'll also talk about how to verify your playbooks, because let's say when you're running your playbook on, let's say, 50 servers or 100 servers, affordability of making errors is very less, right? Because if you have something wrong in your playbook, you might be breaking 50 servers at one time. Although there is a concept of serialization and failure percentage in Ansible, but still, like, you may want to verify your playbooks before you even try to run them on your actual machines, right? So for that purpose, we have different things that we can do with playbooks. First is check mode that we will talk about, then diff mode, syntax check, and Ansible Lint. So first is check mode. So what is Ansible check mode? So let's say we have a playbook to create a file and a directory under temp folder for us on a Linux server. So this is the playbook. We have the playbook. We have the play name. It's a single play playbook. We have the host where we want to run the play, and then we have set of tasks that we want to run under this play, which is to create a file and a directory under temp directory, under temp folder for our server. Now, imagine we want to test this, right? So what we can do is, using the check mode, it's like a rehearsal, right? So what we can do is we can run Ansible, similar command, Ansible playbook, and then your playbook name. In our case, the playbook name is Ansible Playbook 4.yaml, and you can run it with -- check flag. So what it would do is, it will show you the results as is, what it would do on the remote host without doing anything. So if I press enter, here you would notice it says I created a file, I created a directory, and it says there is one thing that got changed, and that's my summary of tasks. Now, if I see, did it really create this directory? As you can see, it did not create this directory. So the check mode is like a rehearsal where we would see what Ansible do if Playbook was to run on the remote host. I don't know if you have learned or know about kubectl command in Kubernetes. It's like dry run on server side. So you do, like, for example, if you have a manifest file for Kubernetes, you can do kubectl apply -f file name, then -- dry run equal to server. That means it's some sort of similar behavior. It's basically simulating what it would do without doing anything. So now in check mode, although we ran the playbook, since we ran it in check mode, it really actually didn't do anything on the remote host. But on the other hand, you may have a situation where you want to actually make the changes on the remote host, but you also want to see what was changed, what was the configuration before running the command or task, and what was the configuration after executing the task. So in that case, you can run your playbook in a diff mode. In that case, the playbook logs or output would show you before and after state of your remote configurations. So what we can do is we can run the playbook again similarly using Ansible Playbook command. But what we can do is, instead of running it with check, we can add --diff flag to it. Now if I press enter, here you can see that it says the previous state was that the directory was absent, and after the playbook or this task would run, the directory will be created. So this is one example, but you can have a different example. Like, for example, if you're it could be that your directory was present but the permissions were different, or it can be anything. So if you want to check what differences are made, you can run it using this flag. If I want to now check if that directory actually got created, it didn't because we ran it using check mode. Now if I run it without check mode and press enter, now in this case you can see that the actual file got created. So since we didn't run it with check mode, we ran it with only diff mode, the playbook was executed. But now we can see what was the status before and after. As we can see, in case of file, the state was before was absent. Now it's touch, that means it created the text file for us. Similar cases for the directory. So now if we do ls-ltr for the directory, we can see that directory got created, and if we see here, the file also got created because we ran the playbook in diff mode without --check. Other than that, if you want to locally check the syntax of your playbook, you can run it another flag. It's called syntax check. So similar to previous two flags, you can run it using Ansible Playbook, then playbook name --syntax check. In this case, if you see, there was no error in my playbook, so syntax check was successful. So now let me go back and let's just, for example, let me remove the column from here. Although in my case, since my Visual Studio Code is already linting YAML file, so it's basically complaining that a key is needed. It's not able to find the key here. So in my case, my VS Code is intelligent enough to give me the syntax errors here. But if you don't have VS Code, or you want to automatically check your syntax of your playbook before deploying, or you have some CI/CD pipeline where you want to run the playbooks, here you can see as soon as I run the playbook with the syntax check, it gave me an error that JSON is expecting a key value pair, and it actually gave me the exact line and column where it found it thinks that the error could be. And now if I go back to my playbook YAML file, I fix the syntax. If I run the syntax check again, in this case, it now is not giving me any error. So this is your syntax check. So we have talked about check mode, diff mode, syntax check. Now there is another utility which is provided by Ansible, which is called Ansible Lint. So now consider a scenario where you're working for a bigger organization and the number of playbooks or Ansible related code has grown drastically in your organization. And now it's becoming very difficult for you to understand and keep track of all the playbooks that are being written or used by your team. So making sure that you are following the best practices becomes important, and you realize that you need some kind of help for these kind of things. So that's where Ansible Lint comes into the picture. So Ansible Lint is a command line tool that links your Ansible playbooks, roles, collections. It checks your playbooks for potential errors, bugs, syntax checks, etc. So you can think of Ansible Lint like an automated tool that is guiding you to follow best practices for your Ansible code. So let's go back to our playbook where we were creating a file and a directory on a system. Now here you can see that this is VS Code, right? So it's already, if you notice, complaining to me about something. So we will not focus on this for now. Let's go back to the command line tool. So Ansible Lint is installed when you install Ansible. Run Ansible Lint -- version to validate the version of your Ansible Lint command line utility. So in my case, if you see, I have 691 installed, and although it's giving me a warning that it needs Python 3.9 and I have Python 3.8, so that's fine. For now we can just ignore it because this is just a warning. So how do we use Ansible Lint? So using Ansible Lint is straightforward. You can use it using similar to how you used Ansible Playbook, which is Ansible Lint followed by your playbook name. In our case, the playbook that we want to lint is Ansible Playbook 4.yaml. Let me enter it. Now here you can see that it has given me lots of errors. So let's look into the output a little closely. So it says we have total 4 violations that are fatal. Now here you can see that it says the first warning is that use fqcn for built-in module action file, and that's at line number 5. So if we go to our playbook, it says that in line number 5, which is the task to create a file, we have a module which we are using, which is to create the file called file module. It is suggesting that instead of just writing file, we should use fully qualified collection name for inbuilt function, which is ansible.builtin, and that is what it is proposing, which is correct because latest version of Ansible, they are moving Ansible to AAP, which is called Ansible Automation Platform, where they would be creating collections, and all the default modules that we were using in the older versions of Ansible would come under Ansible.builtin collection. This is the course for the absolute beginners, so don't worry about it. We'll probably create another course for advanced users later on, but for now you can think of Ansible Lint as a tool that will help you follow the best practices. So first thing is it says use the latest best practice, which was to use fqcn. Let's go back. Now the second thing it says is, which is a warning because it's yellow, it says file permissions unset or incorrect. So what it is saying is when we are creating a file, we are not specifying the file permissions. So what would happen is the user with which the Ansible is connecting to the remote host, the permissions of the file created by Ansible task would depend on the umask setting of that user. So if you are creating this file on 100 servers, there is a potential chance that 2 different servers have different file permissions because we didn't specifically specify the file permission that we want on the remote host, which is not a good practice. We haven't specified the ownership. So it could be that on 30 servers, we are using user 1 to connect from Ansible. On the rest 20 servers, we are using user 2. So in first 30 server, the temp Ansible text file will be created with a different ownership as compared to the other 20 servers. So you can think of this warning as a best practice that we should use when creating the file module. So this is just one example how useful Ansible Lint can be. Now in the line number 9, again it is complaining about fqcn because we again are using file module, and again in our case the second time also it's giving error that permissions are not set. Now in certain cases we may want to skip certain type of warnings, right? So let's say in our case we know that if we are using, let's say, older versions of Ansible, and we know fqcn is not really necessary and we may want to qualify fqcn as warning rather than error, we can create .config ansible lint.yaml file. Under that file, we can create, for example, warn list. In that warn list, we specify the rules that we want to qualify as warning. So we can just say fqcn related rules, or sorry, warnings rather, should come under as warning rather than fatal error. Or if we want to just simply skip those kind of warnings, those kind of rule checks, we can just add them under the skip list also. So basically the idea is that if you want, you can also skip or add additional rules. So that's your overriding the specific rules or tags by adding a custom configuration file. Now in the last section of this screen is the rule violation summary. So if you see the count, so if you notice the columns, we have count, tag, profile, rule, and associated tags. So we have 2 counts of tag risky file permissions, which we have already talked about, which is related to your safety, and the rule is related to unpredictability and warning. So rule is related to your unpredictability because you don't know what type of permissions will get created on the remote host. The other type of error with 2 counts is related to fqcn, which is basically your comes under production profile related to your formatting, because it could be that if you're running your code on a latest version of Ansible, it will not run because you have not specified the fqcn. So if you can see, overall test is failed and 2 out of 5 star rating we got. So if you are, for example, adding this in your CI/CD pipeline based on your test result, you can execute a playbook or fail it. So now let's go back and fix our second module also. So at least we'll fix the fatal warnings and we'll not be adding the permissions for now. So let's rerun this playbook now after we have fixed the modules to use fqcn. Now in this case, since we have fixed the fatal errors, it's saying we have only 2 violations left, which are warnings only, not fatal warnings. So the overall result now is passed. If you see the rule violation summary, now we only have 2 count of warnings which are related to risky file permissions, but we don't have the fatal ones related to fqcn. So overall result of our Ansible lint is success, although we haven't got the good rating, which is fine for now because we know the reason why we have created this playbook for demo purpose only. So this way we can see that Ansible lint can be very useful when you're maintaining lots of different type of playbooks where the complexity is high and you don't always necessarily have time to review your playbooks, right? Other scenario could be that, let's say some playbook was written 2-3 years back and you didn't have to use that playbook till now, but all of a sudden because of some 0-day or whatever the purpose could be for that playbook, you might have to use that playbook suddenly. And how do you make sure that that playbook is following the standards or is following the best practice? And that's where you can always rely on Ansible lint to give you certain level of confidence that the playbook is still good enough that you can at least start using it on a lower environment, and this will give you a good head start. Okay folks, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. In the next video we will talk about Ansible variables, then we'll continue with modules and we'll start writing little more complex playbooks. We'll also probably talk about Ansible Vault and other features. If you're finding these videos useful, please subscribe to my channel, and you can add some comments also that will encourage me to create more videos for you. Or if you have some suggestions, you can also write them in our comment section. Thank you very much for your time. I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.